I'm here today deep in the heart of Queens, in a little section known as Woodhaven, to meet up with Skid Maher to talk about his character at a historical New York bar known as Neir's Tavern. So even though it's the middle of the day and I wanted to get a beer with you, I saw they had a frozen margarita machine, and my body and mind are incapable of saying no to a frozen margarita machine.
Very difficult. I wouldn't ask you to stress yourself. You have to turn it down.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
So,
yes.
We are in Woodhaven, Queens, which, to give people some perspective, this is Queens, about how big Queens is. We're about 45 minutes away from the office, and it's 7.5 miles away.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Would you walk from here to Astoria?
I have done it. That takes about 3 hours.
3 hours?
Yeah, but I usually I'll walk part of the way. I'll walk up to the Forest Hill stop, which is great because they have a big Ramones mural and stuff.
That's
and
nice.
It's a very sort of picture of Bavarian Village, like kind of designed to it. I'll take the train from there and then 46th Street, walk from there. So I'll walk for about an hour and then take the train for the rest of the way. So.
That's great. I haven't been out here. This is like the second time I've been out here. And also, I've never been to this bar. And you walk in, it's just like, well, here's a piece of history. And little did I know, there's a lot of history to this place. So tell me about Neir's Hall.
This is my favorite bar in New York. I love this place. This place was built in 1829. I think it's the oldest bar in New York City. It started off as, there was a racetrack here, like a horse racing track. And it would service like the people like coming out to see the horse races back when this was like the country.
That's crazy because now the buildings are on top of each other
Yeah.
and every 3 feet, and it used to be just a horse track.
Yeah, there's like now there's like elevated like subway like 3 blocks away and everything. So it's crazy, but yeah, this used to be a horse race, but it's still like a horse kind of themes around here. And yeah, it's been in basically constant use since then. The bar was installed during the Grant administration, so like back in the late 1860s, this thing was installed, or the early 1870s. The tons of Goodfellas was shot here, which is awesome. Like there's a scene with De Niro like right over here where he's like deciding whether to kill Maury or not, and he's just like standing in the, the Clapton song like kicks in. He's like standing right there. And actually, in that movie too, my old acting teacher is in it. She plays De Niro's wife in that movie.
Really?
Yeah, and she said. So I was watching the movie the other night to prep for this, and she's actually sitting at the other end of the bar. So it's just like they're like panning past her, and it's just like she's sitting next to Ileana Douglas. And it's really cool. So yeah, I love this place. And also Mae West had her debut here.
I saw that. There's like a little placard outside. I was sitting there, and I didn't even look up until you came, and it tells you the history of this place. So cool. Now I want to watch Goodfellas, and I also want to make 2 versions of this video. One that will be demonetized because we'll show scenes from Goodfellas.
We're filmed. I was saying, like, you can show the shots of like the movie.
So very cool. Also very cool to just hang out and have a drink with you in the middle of the day. I'm trying to think, the last time we had a drink together was just you and me, was probably in Philly. We went to that brewery.
Oh, yeah.
That was forever ago. Maybe
that was
2 Packs Unplugged ago.
Yeah.
And then before that, it was a conversation that led you to be like, I'm going to do, what was that adventure path? The Ruins of Aslan. We were at like a Queens bar way, way early, like the Patreon was about to launch.
Yeah.
And you were like, here's what I'm thinking. Anyways, good to hang, but now we're talking about your character for the New Glass Cannon podcast. I would say nothing against the other people on this show, but if I were to hazard a guess at how many views these videos are going to get, this one will probably get the most. This is your jam. This is your jam. You're a man. You're the Lon Chaney of role-playing games. That's what they call you.
Wow, that's great.
That's what it'll say on your tombstone.
Thank you.
The Lon Chaney.
The Lon Chaney Senior.
What's a role-playing game? Who's Lon Chaney? Now, I don't even know where to start. Well, here's where I'll start. I'll start with just the basics, sort of like just the upper crust of this onion we're going to peel back. What ancestry and what class?
My plan is to be a goblin psychic.
When I say that I had no idea until this moment that you were thinking goblin, and I still don't believe you. Goblin psychic?
Goblin Psychic.
Wow.
Because we did that, the Dark Archive playtest at Gen Con last year, and I played a Goblin Psychic. And I just got the idea like kind of stuck in my head. And it was only, obviously for like 3 hours or something.
Right.
And this is a different character, but I just, there's something about the seed of that like got stuck in me. And yeah, it got me really excited. So I think I've been thinking about it for a while now, and I think I have a solid idea of it. And yeah, I'm very excited.
I mean, there's so much to break down just from the answer to this one question. But let's start with the psychic part. When we did that Dark Archive playthrough at Gen Con in the Glass Cannon booth last year, I could tell like the psychic just scratched an itch for you.
Yeah.
I was like, whatever we do in the future, Skid's gonna be playing a psychic.
Yeah. There was something, it was fun just playing second edition that we played mostly. I've been playing Aldo, who's an alchemist, and I think it's mostly kind of a support class. And as much as I love the character, I feel like a lot of times like I'm not really able to affect much tactically. So it was really nice playing as a psychic to just do massive damage and do other like really big flashy things that really kind of swung the tide of combats. So there was that, and like the sort of the thematic stuff like I really like. I think initially my old character was based off the Cyndi Lauper character in the movie Vibes. It's a very different concept, but there's still some of the Cyndi Lauper in it. So yeah, but I don't know. There's just it's something new. That's something like too that from old original Dungeons and Dragons was the psionics, which were kind of an optional rule set.
Yeah.
Not anything that I ever ended up really exploring as a player myself as a kid, but the idea of it was always like really interesting to me, like this different kind of like magic that has a different origin and sort of a different feel to it. So yeah, all that has got me like super excited.
When I think psychic, I think like Professor X, just like using mind blasts and stuff. But correct me if I'm wrong, the way the psychic is presented in 2E, you have a lot of different options. Where are you leaning?
I'm leaning towards less Professor X, more Carrie. So
like Stephen King's Carrie.
So like, or Drew Carey. Thinking of more Drew Carey.
It's gonna be more Drew Carey.
Yeah, because I got the glasses and I just figured. But just more like lots of fire.
Yeah.
Like lots of fire and explosions. That's something that I'm always drawn to.
Yeah.
In real life and in games. so that's exciting. But definitely like a lot of like damage being dealt. And some melee too, because that's something that I got into a little bit in our playtest as well. Then that was like, oh, this is cool. This is cool too. So, and some of the mechanics kind of fit in with the idea for the personality of the character as well. So,
well, this is interesting, right? Because when I think Goblin, before we get into like your inspiration, when I think Goblin, I think like that's kind of always the way we played it. I remember like in the early days of Glass Cannon, it might even be pre-Glass Cannon, when we would just run Pathfinder Society scenarios, and you ran a lot of them when we couldn't get our Jade Regent group together. You did the Frost Fur Captives. Yeah,
that was pre-Glass Cannon. Yeah.
And that, to me, kind of set the tone for how goblins have always been played on the network. Is it this kind of goblin, or is it some sort of erudite scholar?
Well, it's a little different because my concept is, and this is something that I'm kind of borrowing from Karazor, my character in SideQuest Side Sesh.
Much beloved.
I love him. I don't know, maybe not everyone loves him, but I certainly love him. But that was something that is an idea that I really liked, was this sort of this stereotypical idea of like what a bugbear is, as this sort of barbarous and kind of feral and whatever, but raised in a different sort of environment, and what would they end up like? And so that's my idea, is that this goblin was taken along with the other children in their tribe into a different setting and like raised among humans.
Okay.
Like sort of upper class humans. And so that his personality is informed by that experience that he has growing up. So he's not quite like the goblins that I would have played as an NPC,
right,
across for captives, but there's some of that in there too. So
a little fish out of water sort of situation.
And I love doing that. The other thing that I love doing is I love taking joke concepts and gradually fleshing it out to where it's actually a real thing.
Right, you start with a joke and you eventually layer it with gravitas.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people to kind of pinpoint where you're going.
Yeah, it's like, where was the joke? Like in our Star Wars game, like the PRCL8, like my coffee maker droid. Like that was something, it was a joke. But then it was just like, wow, I actually love like the fact that this, security droid was repurposed as a coffee maker, made to have coffee flowing through his system for 40 years by the Imperials. Like, of course he would hate them. Like, of course he would do anything that he could to destroy all of them. So yeah, I love doing stuff like that. So that this kind of like started as there's sort of elements of that started as just something goofy and fun. But now it's just like, as I'm thinking about it, I'm fleshing it in and making it into something more real. So
I think that's become kind of a hallmark of the network, and a lot of it has to depend on how long we play something. For every game of Dread where we're just like off the wall and goofy and there's no heart whatsoever, there are games where, like, with some longevity, something that starts out silly starts to have some depth.
Yeah.
I feel like with you, and you correct me if I'm wrong, when you build characters, they tend to be heavily influenced, at least at the start, by whatever you're really into at the moment.
Yeah.
Because I always, when you talk about your characters for any of these shows, you're always like, so there's a show that I'm watching, or there's this comic book that I'm reading, and then it may go off in other directions, but there's an initial spark that seems to come from what you're excited about at the moment.
Yeah.
Is this character have that?
It's more sort of a delayed fuse, because I was really into the movie Vibes like a year and a half ago. I was watching, I was like, this movie's way better than I remembered, and then that made me want to play the Goblin Psychic initially, and that Goblin Psychic was what inspired this Goblin Psychic. So
it's still Vibes.
Shout out to Babalu Mandel for his amazing work on the script of Vibes.
So it's basically inspired by the Goblin that was inspired by Vibes.
Yeah, although there's some stuff, because I've been reading, I don't read any books anymore because something broke in my head.
I feel that, yeah.
But
I feel that in myself, not in you.
Oh, no, yeah, I know.
I can feel that you're broken.
But I've been reading House of Leaves.
Oh, yeah.
And like, there's some stuff from that has sort of worked its way into my concept as well. So yeah, there's a few other things that like I'm sort of have been pollinating like what I've been thinking about, but the main thing was Vibes.
Do you realize how many people are going to hear Goblin, Karazor, and House of Leaves and just lose their fucking mind?
I hope so.
At what you could be building.
I hope so.
And then maybe 6 or 7 people will hear Vibes and be excited about
right.
that.
I know there's a huge Vibes community out there. I don't want to let them down. That's my thing, because there's so many of them, and they're so vocal, and I just don't want to expose myself to that kind of scrutiny if I fuck it up. I don't want to screw it up.
Are you going to VibesCon this year?
I can't make it to VibesCon this year.
Maybe next year. That's
Maybe
what we always
year.
say, though.
See you next year, Albuquerque.
The Ramada, the Albuquerque Ramada. One of the interesting things about this AP that's different from others, like, Giant Slayer, you all started in True Now, you're all from this village. Well, with this, you can be from anywhere, and you all experience this moment that will bring you together and set you off on this adventure. So one of the things that we want to do is have you be from Galarian, have you be from Kadira or from Osirian, but to have the actual village or town that you came from be something that's wholly your own. Have you thought about where you are and what that village might be like?
Yeah, I thought about, because the character came initially from a goblin village, and I think they don't know, they have no memory of it at all. They have no memory of this village. Their only memory they have is the new life that they got after they had been kind of abducted. But this village, I think it's like, I want it to be in like Arcadia, like somewhere like across the ocean, like, because it could be like somewhere new that we haven't seen anything of.
Yeah.
So I think he's initially like from, the equivalent of Saskatchewan in Arcadia. So he was taken from there, and then I think he was raised in Cheliax, actually.
Oh.
Either like Cheliax or maybe Corvosa or something, but like a bigger city, and somewhere where ethically, like they would be acceptable generally for the character to be treated this way, to have been taken from their family and raised in servitude, like that sort of environment. So I'm leaning towards Cheliax, but I also could just come up with something just completely new.
Right.
Which I might end up doing to something, we have not seen at all, and no one's seen before.
Right.
So it could be that. So, yeah.
I'm interested, in seeing, especially your backstory, because when I think going back to Giant Slayer, your backstory that I have the email that you sent to me for Galabras, and it just casually mentions Brander. And at the time I didn't think anything of it, and then as we started recording and I was thinking, like, how can I really tie these people's backstory into the pre-written adventure, that was the thing that kind of jumped out at me. And then look what that became.
Yeah.
So I wonder, what's going to be that? Is that going to come from you? Probably, but who knows? So I'm so excited as we get deeper into this to find out more about these backstories and see where that Brander moment or moments are going to come from. Yeah. That I may not even realize when I first hear these stories, but as we start playing, it starts to take on a larger significance based on you guys' improv, and then I lean into it. I wonder, do you think you're going to have the Brander moment?
I don't know. But it is fun. I love coming up with stuff like that just in improv. Something similar happened in our Blood of the Wild game, where Paula's character and my character, my character was another orphan, like surprise, an orphan in our fantasy RPG. Doing it again. But I was orphaned and raised in the village, and she mentioned having a father, and I was just like, well, maybe he's my adoptive father too. Maybe we were raised as siblings. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, okay, great. And now it's this really tight bond that our characters share because of this thing that came out through gameplay. We didn't plan or anything, and it's one of my favorite things about that game. So I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely going to think out some of this stuff as much as I can, or as much as I feel will be useful. But I know I want to save room. I always try to save room for stuff to be fleshed out over the course of gameplay with input from other people and everything. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. It's like writing a biography with a lot of blank lines.
Yeah.
To let it that's how I like to do it.
Yeah.
Funny story for you. So I was in LA last week, and we were going to hang out, Joe and I, and he's like, oh, Jared, Mary Lou, and Paula, they're around they just went to Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. It was right near our hotel. And I was like, I've never been. Let's go to Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. The one in West Hollywood. I'd never been, so I walked in there. And I mean, if you've never been to Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles, it's like an American institution.
Yeah.
So we go in there, and I'm sitting there with the cast of Blood of the Wild, and I'm like the low rent Skid, because you're the only cast member that's missing.
Yeah.
And as we're sitting there eating fried chicken and waffles, they start telling me about some episodes that they've recorded of Blood of the Wild. which heavily involved your character and Paula's character, and just some really cool things that happened. And I'm sitting there just listening to this like I'm listening to people talk about their favorite television show and getting as invested in what they're talking about and thinking to myself, like, I need to go home and I need to listen to that show. I need to watch The Last of Us, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's this meta thing that went on as I continued to ruminate on this, and you made me think about it. It was like, how fucking cool that we get to do this.
It is really cool. It's really cool.
And now we get to start all over again with the show that launched it all.
I am so excited. I really can't wait. I'm just, the concept of the story, my character idea, I'm so excited about the new studio and just playing in person again, which we have not done. Like Gen Con was the only time we've done it, like in years.
And the tour.
And the tour.
And even that's a different beast.
And that's a whole different thing. So yeah, I'm super excited. I can't wait.
It's happening, buddy.